I'm Sam Ross. I'm a junior at Montgomery Blair High School. I'm in the Tacoma Park Silver Spring area, and I'm super excited to be a finalist for this year's Student Member of the Board of Education.
Hello, I'm Jason Maxine of Martley Moco, and today we have Sami Saeed, the current Montgomery County student member of the board, helping me to interview SMOB finalist Sam Ross. Hi, guys.
Hello, Sami Saeed, Richard Montgomery High School student and also student member of the board. And we're also here with Sam Ross. Sam, do you want to say a couple words?
Hi, I'm Sam Ross. I'm a junior at Montgomery Blair High School. I'm in the Tacoma Park Silver Spring area, and I'm super excited to be a finalist for this year's Student Member of the Board of Education.
Okay, great. So with that, we'll get into questions. Basically, start out with shorter questions, and then we'll get to some longer form questions, and then Sammy, I think, has the more open-ended questions at the end. So the first question is, do you support reinstating final exams?
So this is kind of a thorny question because in many ways I see that we do have final exams. This year is the first year in effect for the new Maryland State Department of Education and of course exam standards. And I think honestly, we'll see how this year goes, and then it'll form my opinion for the next few years because on top of that, we also have AP and IB exams for our high school students who are in more advanced coursework. And we see that that's generally pretty successful with the students who want to take higher level courses, who want to have that more challenging material, more challenging experience. But at the same time, they were removed for a reason. And I do think it would be very unpopular among students if they were reinstated, just because it's a hassle to take them. Anyone who studied for the SAT, the AP test, they know it. And it's also not entirely, as useful for what we think it's useful for as it really is the argument that I always hear from educational thinkers when it comes to final exams in high school is yes, there's something that you have in college. Yes, in college you have your midterms, you have your final exams, and they are a very large portion of your grade. But also in college, you take 15 credit hours, and the average high school student is probably going to be in class for up to 40 hours a week. So it's a lot less time to be studying. It's a lot less time to be exploring the content on your own. Our standards are much more rigorous than most college course standards. Teachers really have to hit a couple things to a T. So the implementation might not work out to prepare students for college as much as we think it would. That being said, if we get back the results from end of course exams this year and they are stupendous, students are succeeding, the strategies that were put in place to ensure that students can succeed worked, then I would, not completely rule it out, but we do kind of have to think a little harder because just it prepares for college isn't the whole picture.
Okay, great. Do you favor the 50% rule, and what are your thoughts on it?
So another very thorny question, man. I love these. The 50% rule is contentious. I will not deny that. Students, which, I'm running to represent, mostly support it. They see it as really just a grade saver. I know, I hate to admit it, it's come in clutch for me a few times. Sammy knows we miss a lot of school going to these kinds of things. We miss a lot of assignments. And the new rule shifts have really kind of brought students back up to caring about it again. But at the end of the day, what I believe MCPS needs to be doing in terms of these more thorny grading regulations that at the end of the day are very bureaucratic and boring, but can have very large impacts on students is follow the other school districts. That's not, the very hit you in the face, no, MCPS needs to be doing this answer. But at the end of the day, in order to keep ourselves on par with the other excellent school districts in this nation, the other school districts that are succeeding, the other school districts of similar sizes, the other school districts in Maryland, we need to follow what they're doing. MCPS is the only school district across, the largest 50 school districts in the country that does not have or does have that 50% rule. Okay, maybe we need to take another look at it. But we also don't want to put our students in a position where, okay, I'm applying for college and I've been told that, colleges value MCPS grades less because of the 50% rule, because MCPS is the only one with it. Or colleges, inflate your grades in your in their heads because we don't have the 50% rule. I think we should really just do what's best for students in terms of pursuing the next chapter of their life, and that is probably going to be following what the other school districts are doing.
Okay, good answer. So the next one is, do you support a required financial literacy course?
Uh, I have the like bad answer to this one. To me, the answer is no, and it's also follow the other school districts. Financial literacy is a very hot topic. I believe every student should be prepared to, leave high school with the financial knowledge to support themselves as an adult. But for me, I did that in AP Gov. I did it after we took the AP test when there was no more content to review. I learned all the things. I learned about taxes, mortgages, student loans, debts, how banking works, how stocks work. I hit most of it, and while I can't say it was especially the, most informative, most well-rounded, perfect financial literacy curriculum, I think if we focus more on building it up through this new semester of health that we're mandated, through the AP government course, through math courses. I know basically the only course right now that MCPS has that would require a financial literacy requirement is financial math. And at the end of the day, it's too much of a burden on students, teachers, and schools to say, okay, everyone needs to be taking this course, which I know right now at Blair, I think there are only two sections of it. It is a very, 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 small course at Blair. And finding the teachers, finding the time in student schedules, we already have so many graduation requirements, would really just be unreasonable when I think this is something we can better tie into the, curriculum that we already have.
Okay. Do you support SROs/CEOs being in schools?
I support them being in schools. I think right now the kind of patchwork, well, they can be in schools, but only during this time and only for this reason and only at this place, but they can't be there the whole time is very it's the worst of both worlds, not gonna lie. I believe, you shouldn't be calling a police officer for s school infractions, stuff like, talking back to a teacher or skipping class. That's just not appropriate. Those are issues that the administrator, that the counselor, that the teacher, that the student and the parent should be handling. But at the same time, we're in a different era in MCPS. We're in a different era of safety crises. We're in a different era of just issues on the whole. And while, I don't support a fully armed police officer roving around the building at all times, I do think it's important that they are there as a resource in case there is ever an emergency, that, some of the schools which are certainly farther out from police departments, some of our more rural schools, some of our schools in the up county, which might not have a police station down the street from them, are able to have a police officer in case anything goes wrong. I think overall, it's been a while since the first CEOs were implemented, and it is time to take a closer look at the program right now, reevaluate for our current needs, and of course for MCPD's needs. They do have lower staffing than normal. It is really hard to hire police officers right now, and we also don't want to put too much of a burden on them.
All right. Again, good thought out answer there. So this one's a little tricky. You may want to write down the options, but let me go with the question first. So rank the following factors to look at in terms of importance when discussing boundary studies. So these are the four aspects that MCPS uses, which are utilization, diversity, proximity, and assignment stability. So I know it's a tricky question, but and I can repeat those if you'd like.
Okay, I have them written down really quickly. Can you elaborate or define assignment stability? Because does that mean like not having split matriculation or?
So right. So no, I think technically it means like, okay, they just did this boundary change like 2-3 years ago.
Oh,
But split articulation is definitely an important factor, but I
yeah.
don't think it's one of the four of those. Yeah.
I would consider utilization first, proximity second, diversity third, and assignment stability last, just because, at least from the student perspective, I know utilization is a huge issue. It extends beyond all schools. Obviously, I go to Blair. It's the largest school in the state. We are overutilized, and that means that we have 19 portables, the most of any MCPS school. But it goes further than that. We don't have enough bathrooms, we don't have enough lunch lines, we don't have enough space in our auditorium. It really goes beyond that. And right up the road is underutilized Springbrook. Why aren't we sending more students there? So I would consider utilization first, proximity second, obviously, because there are a lot of students who go very far for their schools. I know, like I mentioned, I'm from the Tacoma Park Silver Spring area. If I wanted to go to the IB program at Sami School, that's about an hour-long bus ride for me, hitting everywhere across the Down and East County. And, if that's the choice you want to make, that's fine. You can do that, but that shouldn't be the way that it's going for you if that's the school that your home base assigned to. I live pretty far south in the county. Blair is a 20-minute drive from my house, and it's the only high school down here. So I definitely understand the struggle of proximity and where your home school is. Diversity is third because here in MCPS, we do have a legacy of drawing boundaries intentionally to be unfair, to discriminate against people of color. And I've always said that's something that we need to confront, especially where I live in the Down County. It's somewhat reported and, take it with a grain of salt because it's very hard to find the truth of it, but it is reported that originally Bethesda Chevy Chase and its clusters were supposed to be in the Down County, but that idea was eventually scrapped because of, you know, Bethesda Chevy Chase parent fears about their students going to school with Down County students who are mostly people of color. And assignment stability, I know this isn't an answer that the parents love. I know you guys want to know what schools your kids are going to when you buy your house, but just out of the four, unfortunately, it fell last. I do understand the concern, but you have some good factors.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, something's going to be last, right? So, okay. So now moving into some questions about MCPS discipline. Do you think MCPS gives teachers and admin the ability to effectively discipline students?
I think this greatly varies by unfortunately area associate superintendent. And while I can't speak to, specific clusters and their ability to or to not, or, specific superintendents and what they think about it, I do believe, I've never been a teacher, that there are some roadblocks. There's some distance between central office and the teachers and administrators who are having to deal with these issues every single day. Um, I think there does need to be some more leeway for teachers and administrators to discipline students and suspend students, especially those who have really done something that shows them to be a danger to the school community. I'm definitely not for suspension as a wide brush for, students who act, disrespectful in class or, like I said, are out in the hallways. That's an issue that can be handled at a lower level. When it comes to students hurting other students, when it comes to students speaking hatefully, when it comes to, repeated examples of teachers not being treated fairly, that is where you really have to think how much talking can really get done here in order to fix the situation. And at some point, when do you just I have to remove. I guess this is a question. This is an answer to a question that you'll probably have later. But yeah, I would have to say it depends.
Okay. So that kind of goes right into our next question, actually, which is, what do you think is and isn't working as far as restorative justice in MCPS?
So I'm a huge proponent of restorative justice. I think, you know, it's been great for me to personally handle some, you know, minor issues with other students and with staff, etc. But it cannot be a catch-all. I think it should be an attitude that we hold towards all student discipline, towards all student care, but you can't use the same techniques for everything. And where I really see restorative justice thriving is in the preventative, is in, so and so was talking smack about so and so. Okay, let's talk this out. before we get to the point where there's a fight happening on school grounds. I know it's a huge issue in middle schools, and middle schools is also where we've seen that restorative justice has the best impact on lowering suspensions, lowering incidents, lowering reoffenses. The data really speaks for itself when it comes to using restorative justice as prevention. When it comes to using restorative justice after the fact, that's where I think we need to take a more critical look because, again, you can't always, there's only so much talking you can do before you really, really, really have to evaluate what you're going to do with some student infractions. Like, I know Sammy talked about it last year, hate speech. There's only so much you can do there. Again, physical violence, there's only so much you can do there. And after all the talking's done, you're still going to need to create a safe school community where some students might not be part of it.
Very, very good answer again. Been impressed by both of you. Answers on some of the stuff. So, next question. Again, this you kind of led right into it. In our research of Montgomery County hate bias incidents from a 16-month period ending in October 2023, 61% of all hate bias incidents in schools targeted Jews. What do you think can and should be done about the rise of anti-Semitism and other hate in MCPS?
I believe the first step to ending any and all hate is simply what MCPS is here to do, which is educate. I know at my school last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, we had some very impactful lessons where, you leave your social studies class, you go to the media center, and you see this exhibit about Holocaust Remembrance Month. I hope and I think that that probably instilled in a lot of students that no matter how funny the joke is, there's some things you don't say. There's some things you should never say because once you learn the truth about how horrible some of the stuff that, any given group, especially Jewish people, have been through, it's it's just not worth whatever laugh you think you're gonna get, whatever, great own you're gonna get on another student. I think that this is the attitude that we need to have for all groups. Learning the history, learning why some things are wrong, especially at a young age, is the first step to ending hate bias. At some later stages, if they know, that's where you have to start bringing in, okay, let's call your parents. Okay, let's have a serious conversation about whether or not, you know, this is you should if you should be allowed to be here in school today after you've, done something that really is deeply impactful. Actually, Sammy and I and Pernille and Yosef, some other students are working on a campaign right now to help combat hate bias incidents by showing just the impact that it can have. Because right now the student attitude is honestly, well, I can make this joke because no one really cares, or I can make this joke because it's not actually offensive, but it is. It is something that needs to be addressed, and we cannot ever, and I think this has always been MCPS's attitude, but I'm willing to carry it on. We cannot ever be soft on these incidents because they they just hurt people so much.
Okay. Fentanyl deaths and ODs among teens has risen in recent years. What are your suggestions of how MCPS can deal with this growing epidemic?
So I know this was a lot more of a hotter topic last year when me and Sammy were running against each other last year. It really it was the topic of the time. And I think we can look at what was done last year that now, okay, kind of settled down. We're having less deaths, we're having less overdoses. We still have some, which in my view is unacceptable, but we're moving in the right direction, despite the fact that fentanyl still continues to flow through our neighborhoods, that um, drug abuse is still very prevalent in our communities. We can look at what we did last year, and what we did last year is just acting as soon as possible. There were a couple overdoses in schools, and there's Narcan everywhere. There were a couple overdoses in the community. We had multiple family engagement forums. Every single school was having an event. They were sharing information about what to do in case of an overdose, how to prevent drug abuse, what steps you can take to help ensure that your students stay safe. And I think we just need to keep that attitude. We need to keep the attitude that this is a crisis. I know it's been a while since we've heard of, unfortunately, a death like Ashley, but we still need to keep this emergency mentality. Last week, or yes, it was last week, there was an overdose in a class at Springbrook. That's completely unacceptable. We need to treat these like the emergencies, like the major incidents that they are, instead of now sidelining it because, oh, things are getting better. It's not as prevalent. Kids know the risks now. No, it's still an emergency. It's still a crisis. We still need to be going as all out as we can to ensure that our death number stays at 0.
Okay, great. So I got just two questions left, and then I'll turn it over to Sammy. So what do you think should be done to help solve our absentee issues in MCPS?
Absenteeism, such a great word. I close my eyes and I see it before I go to sleep. The answer is really tough. I think I say that a lot, but it kind of wants to, absenteeism is an issue viewed very differently by very many people. The prevalent adult attitude, at least in my view, is, well, just show up to school. The prevalent student attitude, in at least my view, is, why do I have to show up to school? It's a conversation that's been going on literally since education became compulsory, but it's having this resurgence now because pandemic, other, the mental health crisis. And I think what we need to do to really tackle it is prove the value of school and make it somewhere that students want to be. Right now, I think we're trending in the right direction in that way, but we're still struggling to prove the value of school. Like, I know so many students who either, oh, I can just get the work done at home. Oh, it's not really that important, like I'll still pass. No, going to college, going to whatever, if you want to go to a trade school, going on to do whatever you want to do in your future, you will need high school to do it. You will need to graduate, hopefully with good grades. You will need to graduate on time in order to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish. And I think instilling that, not in a condescending manner, but in a way that's on students' level, in a way that's, we get it. Sometimes it's hard to get out of bed. I know today I woke up and because of daylight savings, it was dark outside and I was like, what am I doing? But I showed up because, you know, I care about my future. I want to be able to live as an adult. And if we instill that, okay, your dream is to go to this university, you need to be showing up to school every day. Okay, you want to, start a business, you need to be showing up to school every day so that you can learn the math necessary to do that. You want to go on and start a family, you need to be showing up every day to learn about, government, civics, staying engaged in your community. Instilling these values that school is important and that, you know, yeah, it's not the most fun, but you still need to tough it out in order to create the future that you want to see. That's where I think MCPS should be focusing.
Okay, great answers again. My kids are little and they've been saying, we don't want to go either. And it's because they say, it's boring or, whatever. So it's important to make it a place people want to be. All right. So this is my last question, which is, what role do you think parents should have in MCPS related issues?
I'm gonna steal Sammy's line from last year. This is hard to answer because I'm running for student representative, but as someone who's worked with parents, with central office leaders, with educators, and with students, I think that we really need to unify all those groups together. MCCPTA, great advocacy, great organization. MCEA, great advocacy, great organization. MCR, great advocacy, great organization. And if we can bring together everyone who has the same vision of having a great school system, of having excellent teaching and learning, of having great well-being, great safety, that's where I think we can make real change. Right now, all this is splintered off into different groups. What I want to see is, you know, or what I hope to project is that all the energy that I put into representing students, visiting schools, having a student advisory council, regularly engaging students, all that energy that I have, I want to see the other board members, and I also want to see MCPS reflect that. Not to hate on the other board members, but you know, you kind of know that the SMOB is the one working hardest there. They're the one who's visiting the most schools. They're the one who is putting out the most updates. They're the one who, Sammy, we run a like 600-person advisory council. The SMOB and the student arm of the Board of Education, the student arm engagement of MCPS, is really doing a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to engagement. I want to see that same energy, those same standards, hopefully applied to parents as well by the people who represent parents. Of course, I'm not included in that group, so I can't specifically speak to it, but I think overall, a more unified vision with the other board members also putting in the same energy to parent engagement is what I would like to see.
Okay, great. And I'll hand it over to Sammy, and then I'll come up after he's done and close things out. So thank you.
Yeah. So, like you said earlier, I'm gonna ask more like open-ended questions, kind of give you a chance to talk about your thoughts on things a little bit. And also real quick, you said 600-person advisory council, 700,
500, sorry. 700?
700, yeah, technically.
When did we do that?
But the meetings of course get smaller and smaller as year goes by. So, that number's kind of arbitrary at this point, I guess. But, so I'm gonna start with the first question. So what do you believe is the most valuable aspect of the MCPS operating budget, and do you support the items that the board has maintained this year?
You support the items that the board has maintained this year, I was out there at the budget hearings going, let's keep restorative justice, let's keep social workers. I've always advocated very strongly for keeping free AP and IB tests. At the end of the day, I think that the items in the budget which are most important, I mean, it's kind of a basic answer, but I've got to say the funding that we give our schools, our teachers, that big number at the bottom of the school at a glance report that specifies how much money goes into making every school an excellent place to teach and learn. I know it's not a very fun accelerator or like best tracking app, but at the end of the day, I think more students should be aware of that number, just how much, you know, everyone around them, everyone working to help them learn is getting paid. I think every student should know how much money is going into their building being maintained. And yeah, sorry, I guess that's not a very fun answer, but thank you for maintaining the budget.
Yeah, well, the budget isn't necessarily in and of itself the most exciting thing either. So, I guess you can't, elicit a super exciting answer from that. So kind of moving on here, moving on to the student side of thing. What do you believe is, from your visits or whatever, the most important issue to students, and how would you address it as student member of the board?
Should I give my meet the candidates answer? I
Whatever
believe that the
answer
most
is honest.
I believe that the most pressing issue, the most important issue for students is so simply just being heard. I think being heard is an issue that almost every single stakeholder group in MCPS feels, but especially for students, you know, we've talked a lot about a lot of issues about buildings, about restorative justice. Students always love to talk about lunches, but at the end of the day, you really can't know any of these issues without hearing students. You really can't know how to fix any of these issues without hearing students. I've said before, you can't fix safety without knowing what makes students feel unsafe. You can't fix well-being without asking students what resources that they need. You can't even learn, what part of the building needs renovation without asking students, hey, which ceiling tile can you see the big water stain on? Which bathroom doesn't ever have working plumbing? And at the end of the day, a lot of the issues that we have in MCPS, we have good progress on. We have things that we're working to do. We have good outcomes for them, but students just don't feel like any of it is working because no one's really ever sat down and had a conversation with them. all these big figures in MCPS are just kind of, nameless and faceless. That's a superintendent, that's an associate superintendent, that's the deputy superintendent. And I think if we make those names, those people real to students, if we make them listen to students, if we make, students be more aware about what's being done with their responses to some of these questions, overall, everyone will be happier.
Yeah, and it's always the endless battle of, trying to inform students and make them aware of things. Kind of going back to the second part of the question, like how would you address that kind of disparity and, the lack of knowledge that students have? How would you try and inform students? And that's kind of my next question, which was how would you communicate? What method of communication would you use to communicate with students as SMOB? So, like, I'm big on social media. I do that a lot, but what method? You could be school visits, it could be through your advisory council. Do you see yourself utilizing to address that disparity?
So, biggest commitment I think I've ever made during the campaign is visiting all 67 middle and high schools, if elected during my term, to meet students where they are, to talk about the issues where they're happening, So while I love the SMOB Advisory Council, while I love the SMOB Minute, while I love social media, all of those require an extra layer of either driving out to Rockville or, whatever school it rotates to that month, or, having a teacher administrator who reliably plays the SMOB Minutes, having social media. I know at some point in my life, all of those things have been false for me, but the one place where I did have the chance to talk about my issues at my school were when the SMOBs visited my school, were when the SMOB candidates visited my school. And, especially for middle schoolers, especially for students who speak other languages, I think that's where the most impact can be made in terms of reaching students where they are. When it comes to sort of the other side with students more specifically being heard, I mentioned earlier, it's a massive priority of mine to really unite all the stakeholder groups in MCPS to have open dialogues between all of us. One of the things that I want to do is have, more traditional town hall or listening sessions where everyone can come together, especially the issue of safety, super huge. It's going to be really big before schools open in the fall for the new year. What I want to do is bring everyone together, have an honest discussion about what is leading to these feelings of lack of safety in school, what is leading to these incidents in schools, what we can do to fix them, everyone together so that when schools open in the fall, everyone can walk in feeling as safe as possible.
Yeah, great. And that actually kind of coincides with one of my questions here, which is, in your platform post and kind of, what you talked about now, you said that you want to enhance transparency about plans for school safety. And so I want to know like just how do you plan to accomplish that?
Well, the role of the board member isn't really to magic wand fix it all and more just to pressure. But when it comes to, my own initiatives for school safety, I would want to continue or expand upon some of the items in your safety resolution. It comes down to making those plans as available as they can be without compromising the safety of their school. I know at your school there's been a lot of discussion about metal detectors and about, it's in my platform too, more innovative safety technologies. Just what's that going to be? How are we going to ensure that these aren't biased, that they ensure safety, that they ensure that the school is still running smoothly without too many disruptions, that students don't feel like they're walking into prison every single day. I think we need to tackle safety enhancements with the same energy that or at least we aim to have for building renovations. When there's going to be a building renovation at your school, a lot of the time you'll get community letters about that. You'll get to see some of the blueprint plans. Generally, MCPS or the school will have listening sessions about it. And that's the same energy that I want to carry into safety because I hate to say it, it's a little bit more important than which, part of your air duct is getting fixed this month.
Yeah, yeah, I think safety is one of those things that can somewhat be neglected at the high level. And so just a couple more questions before we finish out here. So what do you think that the Board of Education is doing well, and what do you think the Board of Education's weaknesses are, and how would you try and improve them?
I think the biggest strength of the board right now is that, we're going to an election year. Right now, it's very balanced between people who are very experienced at the board, who really know how the system works, and people with some fresher viewpoints, some fresher ideas. I also think it's a great strength of the board right now to really consider all issues. That sounds kind of bad, big and small. Sometimes I look at agenda items and I'm like, why are you guys even hearing this? Like, this is really, this is very insignificant, but I know that there's always going to be some people who it's not insignificant to. You guys always tackle every single issue with a lot of depth, with a lot of rigor, with a lot of real tough questions for MCPS sometimes. I think the biggest weakness of the board, just something that a lot of people have pointed out, is the distance from the public and the lack of availability that a lot of board members have. I kind of touched on this earlier when I was talking about, you know, SMOB is the hardest working member of the board, sometimes kind of just a little bit with having a full advisory council and sending out all these, the SMOB minute and social media updates when to be so honest, I think off the top of my head, I can think of maybe like two other board members who even use social media or try to have any kind of regular updates. And it's being floated around a lot of political circles right now, having a full-time board, having more staff for the board, really expanding the Board of Education to be something on par with the county council since you guys manage a lot. And I think looking at those conversations and really, really taking a deep look at them is what could improve that side to, make sure board members aren't just doing, one school visit an entire year. I think um that's kind of, or the fact that a lot of board members don't really have those kind of in-depth advisory councils that the SMOB has, that they're not providing the same updates, like I said earlier. And taking a deep look at that, taking a deep look to make sure that the SMOB doesn't get left out of that, because literally can't be full-time. We have to go to school too. Um, that's where we can improve.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm just gonna move on to my last question. It's like, 10:15 now, so I don't wanna, take up any more time. But which one of your experiences, your past experiences in leadership roles or advocacy, would you say helped you most and may make you most qualified for this position?
I promise he didn't pay me to say this. This is of my own volition, but it probably is being chief of staff of your small advisory council. We've had a lot of great experiences just being able to engage students. I remember way back when we were starting the application form, like we really took a look at it and we really thought about, okay, will this make it harder for students to, join and give their input? Will this make it easier for students to join and give their input? And I think we've kept that same energy for most of the decisions that we've been making. And that has let me really understand um, how to take a look at student engagement, how to break down some of those barriers. Additionally, how to learn, well, not have to. I have learned a lot in my independent, research, like what I like to call being a nerd. Learned about the budget. I've learned about the boundary study. I've learned about the CIP. I've learned about so much of our policies and practices, what can be improved on, what can be changed. A lot of that has come from the necessity to be able to speak on it on a hats drop in some of your meetings. So I'll love, I'm okay that that's my role, being the nerd girl who knows just a little too much about MCPS. Um, and we've also had the chance to go a lot of cool places. We've been to uh the DFNS warehouse. That was really eye-opening as someone who, used to eat school lunch every single day. Okay, here's how that really goes in. And yeah, sorry if you're watching this. I said that of my own volition.
Yeah, yeah, and that Division of Food and Nutrition Services tour was quite mind-blowing. I don't know how they send out all those lunches every day. It's crazy. But yeah, that's it for me. So Jason, I'm gonna turn it right back over to you so you can close this out.
All right. I just wanted to, thank you both for taking the time to come talk to me and, look forward to, continuing to work with both of you I'm always open for conversations or, whatever I can do to help. So, yeah, thank you for coming out.
I'm Sam Ross. I'm a junior at Montgomery Blair High School. I'm in the Tacoma Park Silver Spring area, and I'm super excited to be a finalist for this year's Student Member of the Board of Education.